second principle, which is equally important, is what is often called due process. There must be a system set up whereby complaints or allegations that rules have been broken and offenses have been committed can be investigated. And basically, the due process includes three things. The first one would be that the person who is accused must be given sufficient details about what they're being accused about so that they can make a decent answer or explain. There's none of this, you know perfectly well what you did, and expecting someone to fall into the trap of over-excusing themselves. That's just basically manipulative and unfair. And people must also be given enough time to reply, especially if it is important enough that it could cause a breach in the employment relationship or in a personal relationship. You have to give people time to get their minds together and to be able to think of what they want to say in response. And third, if at work they feel that they don't know how to explain well enough themselves and they want to have someone with them for support or to represent their views, by and large they must be given the right to have someone with them to represent what it is they want to say. And the fourth general principle under due process is that by and large, if there's going to be a hearing, the person who is conducting the hearing should not be the same person who conducts an inquiry into the incident, and should not be the same person who has initially made the accusation. This is to ensure objectivity and to prevent people's emotions getting in the way of the course of justice. A person should have the right to have a face-to-face encounter with the person who is making the allegation against them. This is a general principle, but it's not an inviolate principle. In some cases where there's a moral issue involved, like sexual harassment, for example, if the person making the allegation is very young and inexperienced, they may not be able to face the person who is the alleged perpetrator. In other instances, it could be that there's a safety provision involved where there's a threat of retaliation. In our often violent societies in the Caribbean, this does happen. And if that is suspected, then this principle can be overruled. It's not one of the most fundamental principles of due process. It's just a general recommendation. No decision should be taken until a complete explanation has been brought forward, and if there is to be an inquiry, until the inquiry is complete. You should never make a decision on a disciplinary issue until you are sure that all the evidence is in. And whatever happens, if you think that action has to be taken, you never, ever prepare a disciplinary letter in front. In other words, you don't come into a meeting with a disciplinary letter already prepared until you have heard all the evidence. And there should be a space between hearing the evidence and making the decision. In other words, you disconnect the two. If it's a matter at home, say, I'd like to have some time to think about that, of what you've said. If it's a matter at work, you can use the same words. Or you can say, okay, I will let you know what the decision is within a day or 2 days or some reasonable period, but you don't let it carry on too long. And you never introduce new evidence while that disciplinary hearing is going on. In other words, you don't refer to something that happened last week or last month. You stick to the issue, and if it's a personal relationship, you don't bring up things that happened a year ago when you're discussing this particular issue.